Welcome back to the chat. Prosecutors are expected to rest their case today in the trial of a former Marine accused in the fatal shooting of Chris Kyle and his friend. Eddie Ray Routh has confessed to the February 2013 slayings, but has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Prosecutors showed a video confession shown to jurors on Monday, and in that video, Routh tells a Texas Ranger that he shot Kyle first and added, "I'm sorry for what I have done." And joining us now is our legal contributor, Heather Quick. And Heather, the media not allowed in on this, so we're not actually seeing that videotaped confession. But it's interesting because he said, "I'm sorry for what I've done. I knew it was wrong. I wish I hadn't have done it." The defense, they're saying in this case that he was insane. He didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't tell right from wrong. But then if he is now saying in this videotaped confession that it was wrong, I shouldn't have done it, does that just shoot the defense's case down?
Makes it difficult, the showing of remorse that you talked about, and to say I'm sorry, because we talked last time that one of the, when you're looking at insanity, first they've got to prove a mental defect or disease, but then did he know what he did was wrong? Did he think it was in self-defense? Did he think he was in combat? When we talked about the PTSD. Some of the comments that were in his confession in there, though, I wasn't sure. I think they could, and I hate to use the word spin it, but I mean, the way they're going to use his words as his defense. I did question, did he really understand what he was talking about in that confession?
Yeah, speaking of some of those comments, they were pigs and people eating his soul, all sorts of, just kind of strange comments that would lead you to believe this person is not sound of mind at the time. But again, it's kind of the linchpin you said. You can kind of be, excuse me, a little crazy, but it's still a matter of knowing is what you did wrong.
Exactly.
That's the key.
Yeah, that confession, there were a lot of problems that I had with it in thinking, well, on his behalf, does he know what he's doing? And where did he think he was at that time? And
wasn't there also a police chase involved too in it before they got him, which again would kind of lead you to believe, well, if you are trying to get away, you did something wrong.
But he also, after this happened, I think he went to Taco Bell, right? Didn't he go and order burritos and then go to his sister's house?
Went to his sister's house, and then I think after that was a police chase because he was in Chris Kyle's pickup truck. He
was
stole
in his
it.
pickup truck. So how much does this play into the I mean, again, it goes back to that, did he know right or wrong? There's a lot of evidence to show he clearly was not of right mind. Right. But when was he not of right mind?
And, because it has to be when he actually pulled the trigger, when that was going on. And is there an expert who is saying that? Saying you didn't know what you were doing clearly? Because we can infer as laypersons on the jury, well, that doesn't seem right. That seems crazy, but that's not the standard. As we're looking at it, well, gosh, if you just commit a murder, but you wouldn't go to Taco Bell, you wouldn't do these things, you wouldn't take his truck, you'd get caught. You're driving the man's truck.
And he also called them, I think, like 4 times after the shooting, too.
Now that, to me, is very much
Why is that so important?
Well,
and he was talking about rain, too, wasn't he? He was talking about the rain no more.
It was some weird messages.
But why is that so important?
Because he killed a man. If he knew he killed him and really was of right mind, you're calling the man you killed. And it's not like it's this master manipulation. I think the prosecution has a hard time making that. They would just say defense hasn't met its burden. Because if you are going to plead an insanity defense, you do then have a burden to show that you've met that criteria as far as the mental disease and illness, and that he didn't know, and that caused him to not know right from wrong.
Now, speaking of insanity, there's been a report that he had used marijuana, allegedly marijuana that was laced. How would that play into this insanity thing?
It's really not going to help it necessarily, because you can't use, well, I was so under the influence of illegal drugs or legal drugs that I didn't know what I was doing. That doesn't work. There really is, rarely that is going to work as a defense. It may mitigate on punishment side, but it's not going to help him legally in his defense.
Yeah, they said voluntary intoxication is not an excuse for the mentally ill. Okay, something else we wanted to get your take on, and this has been on the news a lot as of recent, has to do with Brian Williams and the contract. There's a clause in the contract that basically it's a mortality clause, a morality clause.
Sorry, if he's
not to be confused with. There you go. But which means, you could be fired for doing something that could bring some contempt, scandal, ridicule. It basically hurts your image, in essence, hurts NBC's image as well. So could NBC then say, hey, listen, you're damaging our brand here. I mean, he's still on a 6-month leave without pay while they're investigating.
Yes, absolutely. And those things that is common. I mean, they've hired Brian Williams to be the face of the NBC Nightly News. It's a big responsibility. And yeah, they want to ensure when you're out lying, or think of it, he had committed a crime or had scandalous affairs. You know all the stuff that bring people down.
But they don't necessarily spell it out, or do they? I mean, because in a contract, are they going to spell these things out, or is it going to be purposely vague? So that they can have that judgment.
I think you want the judgment, absolutely. And how does it affect the viewers? How does it affect, all the, I mean, he's getting a lot of publicity, but it's negative publicity because they want to have somebody, again, that is trustworthy. And so, of course, that's where all the jokes are, at least that I've seen. And so that, Brian Williams everywhere. And that's a big problem for what they're talking about, the morality, because they're wanting to present, and they're going to pay somebody who is going to be trustworthy. And so therefore, if they deem he isn't, and it's hard to cover everything, so therefore it is going to be a little bit broad. And
right.
vague.
Yeah,
you
in
can kind
terms
of read between the lines.
News, obviously this is on a national level, but I think at local stations as well, contracts you sign have these types of clauses in them. But is it unusual for other professions to have these types of clauses as well? Probably more and more common, I would think.
I would think, especially when you are having someone you're hiring, you're paying them to be the face of your product, your station, your news, something. So you have expectation of them. I mean, look at when we have endorsements for sport. I mean, remember they get dropped like a hot potato. Absolutely.
I've even read of CEOs of companies who've had that in their contracts, and then they get big scandals, and then boom.
Well, and I'm sure because you are becoming the face of a product, and that carries with it some responsibility. So when it's all good, that's great. But when you do something that doesn't align with the company, it's going to make the company look bad, the product look bad. They've got to get rid of you.
So in the end, if it turns out that he is released because of this clause, what are Brian Williams' options for this?
Well, he can sue.
Oh,
and
really?
He will. And I'm sure he will. He's already got a lawyer. And they'll come up more likely than not with some kind of settlement agreement. They're not, to me, I don't know this personally, but I would say this is not a case that either side wants to take to trial and things like that, because you think of that publicity, that's not going to be good for either one of them and very expensive. So most likely, the value of his contract is very valuable, and so it is substantial. And so he's not going to go down without a fight if he believes that he's got some defenses, and I'm certain that will end in some type of negotiation that we won't really know about.
Maybe a mortality clause is
right. Maybe that was what do you call that?
Kind of,
Freudian slip. I don't know.
That's cut and dried. Mortality clause. You're dead. You're done. I mean,
it's a little bit easier to comply with, the morality.
I might need to check my contract after the end of this. I'm not sure.
I think we all should.
Morality or mortality? Okay. Thank you, Heather. We appreciate you. If you have any questions for Heather, you need any legal advice, you can check out Heather Quick's website, which is thequicklawgroup.com. And on the heels of that, we're going to be talking to a communications instructor for the University of North Florida more about this morality mortality coming up after the break. We'll be right back.